Hey there, everybody. I'm Alex the Hugmonger, and I'm back after 3 weeks because my body decided to make a new evolutionary adaptation, try to really push forward my ability to advance and survive in the world by, having my lungs fail or something. Apparently, the pollen count has gone up a lot, and even people without allergies are now being affected by allergy-like symptoms, which is great. But with that said, a couple weeks back, I was planning on making a video, instead of talking about specific cards, talking about what it is people dislike about group hug decks. So I put out a post on Facebook and went through and just collected a bunch of people's opinions on group hug and what are the unique problems with group hug. And I just kind of wanted to read through some of these and offer some opinions. So the first response I get is from, again, someone on Facebook. It's just like, do you not really know the problem with group hug? And let me just say, that is an interesting problem to have with group hug. If group hug players don't know the problem with group hug, they'll probably ask on Facebook for what your opinion on the problem with group hug is. That's why I asked. Usually involves helping everyone else while not interacting with the board via removal. It puts too much burden on the other players to handle the strongest deck. I don't mind it as much as, say, Chaos decks. It just doesn't seem interesting to me. I mean, what's the win condition? So, as you can see, this back and forth we do kind of go back and forth. They're like, I'm a firm believer every deck needs ramp, card draw, and removal, as well as a way to win. And so one of the things that they say is it puts way too much burden on other players in order to actually deal with the threats on the board, which I kind of agree with. My own group hug decks are particularly bad at dealing with big threats. I do tend to not run much in the way of instances and sorceries that would let me deal with or remove a problem. However, I think that the burden of actually removing those problems is sort of lessened because you are giving out all of those resources to other players. When I, as a group hug player, am looking for ways to deal with problems, I'm going to look at my deck's unique sort of strengths. So, I was talking before I started getting sick about the Yearlock deck that I have ordered in at this point, and it has some huge, somewhat inefficient, high mana cost answers. And then I run things like Squallmonger and so on. So I've got some level of removal, some level of quote board wipiness, board wipe via damage. Is generally not very efficient, but I think that, yeah, I think it is important that group hug players learn some way to throw in some spot removal or board wipes or something. The Mongers make really, really good board wipes if you want to keep to your theme, though perhaps actually my favorite group hug specific board wipe style things are going to be Chain of Acid, which you target a permanent, destroy it, and then that permanent's controller can destroy a permanent and copy your spell. And I like to call that one the Chain of Responsibility, because it really does take a very mature person to be like, all right, I'm going to stop this before it becomes a full board wipe. It's absolutely ridiculous as a card. I'll try to put it up on screen somewhere. All right, next up, we've got if someone wants to play group hug every time, the constantly crazy and messy board states that happen can sometimes take ages to resolve and find a winner. That said, once in a while it's great fun. This is true. I only play group hug. I am hopefully gonna get a reputation as the group hug guy locally. I mean, I would assume among the people I've played with, that's sort of who I am now, because I have Yearlock and I have Kenrith, and both are very group huggy. Like Yearlock's got some board advancing stuff. He's got deals a decent amount of small amounts of damage. over the course of a game and really pushes the game forward. But it's ultimately giving out tons of mana and like recurring creatures and stuff where it can. And it does ultimately resolve in these absolutely wacky board states. There's a combination of cards that effectively everybody's taking everybody's turn. I might actually just make a specific video for that combination of cards, because yeah, group hug decks can make the board really messy and really ridiculous. So it is important in my mind to have a selection of group hug decks with different strategies. That way you're not just playing the oops all hugs kind of deck. Sometimes you're doing Urlock with damage stuff. Sometimes you're doing Kroos Defense Contractor with counters matter kind of things. Maybe you're doing like I was trying for a little bit to do a Corona the False God board walking kind of thing where I would summon creatures and they'd walk around the board, and the idea was kind of nifty, but that one just never played out, unfortunately. Here's one I actually see a fair amount that I wanted to absolutely highlight, and that is this person's just like, when they whine that they're being attacked or killed. This is apparently a fairly common thing among group hug players. Now, I know that I'll joke about it every now and again. I'll be like, why are you attacking me? I'm just a big old friendly group hugging guy. But like when somebody's like, who's the biggest threat at the board, where's the most problems coming from, it's really, really hard for me to say that it's anyone other than my board state, because I'm giving out so much stuff. I'm literally changing the rules of the entire game. Like, there's so much wackiness that's happening specifically from my side of the field as the group hug player, that it's really, really difficult to say that somebody else is like the biggest problem on the board. Honestly, if you're playing a group hug deck, one of the things you have to understand is that you're kind of playing the reverse archenemy, where archenemy decks are going to be like very boomy and showy and like destroy everything on the field, blow up everyone's stuff. Your deck is, I mean, it's literally the opposite, but it creates actually so much more problems. It's one we're gonna get into a little bit later on. There are some decks that won't function at all without a group hug deck in play, but when it comes to having that group hug deck in play, they can actually overrun the entire board, which I'll talk about when we get to a future comment. Okay, so here's one. If anyone has a problem with any playstyle, it's really their issue. That said, an issue with group hug decks is they pretend to be friendly, but it does still have the angle to win. Effectively, it's just a liar. This is true, or it should be. So often you will see group hug players being like, "No, I don't care about winning, guys. I just want to have a wacky old, big old fun group hugging time, hugging my buddies and my friends and my guys, my pals, my boys, just out there hugging it out." And they act really indignant when they start getting attacked and whatever. But again, you have to keep the arch frenemy thing in mind. You have to kind of keep in mind that you are a massive source of threat on the field, more than just about anyone else. And now the latter part of this comment, where he's like, they still have the angle to win. That's not always true, and that's actually one of the things that I think as group hug players we need to like get over. The game does have to end eventually. Divine Intervention is not a fun card. It is one of the worst ways for the game to end. It's incredibly frustrating. It's just not. It's no fun to have that happen to you in a game. So, I prefer Approach of the Second Sun over Divine Intervention, just saying nobody wins the game. Or like no, I think Divine Intervention is the big one that I think of. Yeah, I don't like win con cards very much. I think that they can be particularly feel badsy, but yeah, like stop running Divine Intervention. Um, but no, this guy's complaint saying, "Oh, they say they're being friendly, but they're still angling to win." You should be angling to win. You should be angling to end the game on your terms and finding your unique strategy for doing so. I have already done one video on one potential strategy that is particularly good for closing out a game. That is cloning a opponent's strong strategies. This is in line with any other clone commander. This is in line with like Evelyn the Covetous. This is in line with, Lannis, the cryptozoologist, just trying to use your opponent's strategies against them. That is my when group hugs go to war. That's the clone video. I will leave a link to it where I can. But yeah, you should be trying to close out games. Don't let complaints like this one kind of try to draw you in a wrong direction here. All right, next one we're looking at is Group Hug needs to be played in the right pod. It can easily end up king-making certain decks, like if you're handing out cards and treasures to Edgar or Atraxa while everyone else is playing a strong but not explosive commander. King-making is a thing that comes up a lot in these comments, like a lot. King-making is the concept that you are not going to try to win yourself, or maybe it's not even possible for you to win. What you're going to end up doing is finding the strongest player at the table or your preferred player at the table and either politicsing them to the A position, or you're going to give the strongest player at the table just insurmountable advantages. Now, I don't know if this happens so much. I don't have any evidence of it, but the thing is, it gets brought up a lot. So I don't want to say it never happens. I think that would be very unfair and unkind to say. I know that both with my Yurlok and my Kenrith deck, the most notable thing that I have happen regularly is that it ramps up slower decks, or it beefs up sort of weaker decks. So I was talking earlier about there is a player at my local game store who she likes to run this one Infect style deck, but the deck is so wonky and awkward that it can't run on its own. However, when I'm running Kenrith or Yurlok, it runs pretty well and has actually won several times because it has access to the card draw, the ramp, and all of that it needs. I give it access to the options that it wouldn't otherwise have. I give it the temporal mana from Eldamri's Vineyard and Magus, and give it access to the ramp, the actual ramp from Treasures and from Collective Voyage and Scholarship Sponsor and stuff like that. And this would otherwise be the weakest deck of the table. That might be part of what people are talking about when they're talking about king making. I know with my Kenrith deck, the way I end up trying to finesse or curve around that player is to try to like copy out evolution sages and stuff. Or I found that I have a particular affinity in that particular deck for a mill strategy. Actually based more on card draw than on classic mill, which I'm definitely actually going to make a video on the specific card that enables that strategy, because it is such an explosive card. I did not think it would be as good as it is. I haven't run into the thing yet where the strongest deck at the table is the one that benefited the most. I was playing in a pod with a Gerson Starn player. It was a 5-player pod, and the Gerson Starn deck, he was like, it's never really done much of anything before, but it kind of did accidentally overrun because of like getting access to a bunch more card draw from my side of the table, plus a fairly ridiculous sort of combination of stuff. He didn't actually win. That was, I think, the Voltron player ended up winning that game, which was kind of weird. But while the group hug deck accelerated the stuff going on at the table, I don't think that I've had the instance where like the existence of the group hug deck is why the big overrun deck overran everyone. All right, next one's up. Let's see. This person's like, it's the same I dislike about Pillow Fort. It prolongs the game to boredom, and it's a simple trap trying to seem elaborate. I'll always knock down Pillow Fort and Group Hug on principle. They're consistently up to no good. I actually really like this comparison between Group Hug and Pillow Fort decks, because often the strategies used by Group Hug players are Pillow Fort strategies. When I'm reading deck lists online, you'll often see your Windborn Muses, your Propagandas, Ghostly Prisons, what is it, Web of Inertia? And I mean, even in my Kenneth deck, I do run Nils Discipline Enforcer. And yeah, if you let your Group Hug deck get too cruisery, if you focus on slowing people down, I personally think you're doing Group Hug a little bit backwards, but this is a thing that other Group Hug players do tend to do. There are multiple comments on there talking about how Group Hug are more control-y style players, which I don't disagree with, but I tend to look at Group Hug in sort of the opposite way. While I'm always looking to give out new resources, give out new card draw, stuff like that, and I'm willing to just sort of take a lot of hits that maybe I shouldn't, because I actually don't have the life gain to deal with that. I know that that a bunch of Group Hug style decks they'll run the slower effects, and that can be a major problem. If why you're running Group Hug is to make sure that everybody can kind of do the thing and see the big splashy stuff from their deck, I would actually strongly recommend trying to pull back on the amount of pillow forting you are doing. Maybe trying to create a more offensive line. Is this the one that I found? That Yeah, I actually found a card that I think works pretty well for creating like a bunch of chump blockers, at least. I don't know if I wanna. I'm not gonna like look this up or anything, but it's Verdant Force. So there's this. It's got the ability at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. It's like 8 mana. There is another version of this out there. There's a better version of this out there. But I think that, hey, if you're already running a bunch of Pillow 40 style stuff, then running something like Verdant Force in its place, in the place of something like Ghostly Prison, could be really, really good, because it sets you up for a more offense capability. It lets you do the turn left strategy, the aggro strategy, which might be the kind of thing you find that you're more interested in as far as a winning condition goes. Multani Maro Sorcerer has power equal to the number of cards in all players' hands. If you are running these Pillow Fort style effects, I might recommend removing some of your tempo effects, removing some of your more Pillow Fort style stuff, if you think that your pod would like to have faster games. Now, even faster games can stretch on pretty long with a Group Hug deck in play, because of the ramp and the card draw. meaning everybody has more control potential and so on. So while I want to disagree with what this person says on principle, I think that they're kind of right in that group hug decks do tend to make games run slower. They're significantly more head crunchy if you want to get into that space. My Kenrith deck, I frequently end up having to like stop for a solid second and be like, all right, I need to see everybody's graveyard. I need to see everybody's lands. I need to like individually assess every part of the board state, somewhat frequently because of the sort of wild effects that run through my Kenrith deck. A lot of which I need to make videos on that I think people will really enjoy learning about. I don't have a problem with them. Just disappointed I've never seen one work as intended. Always either doesn't really help anyone or is actually a sleeper meant to win out of nowhere. So it's a glorified pillow fort deck. Literally just talked about this one. Take out some of your pillow fort elements. But also, this guy does seem to be referring to a fairly common thing that you'll hear about in group hug decks, and that is the combo potential. I already talked about get rid of Divine Intervention. That card is trash. It's annoying. Anything that says nobody wins the game it's oh god. I can't with that card. However, there is the other half of the problem that they're talking about. So this person is talking about how they never really seem to help anyone, which I'm not gonna lie, that is that has definitely happened in more than one game. There was a game where I was like, oh, I'm definitely gonna end up king making this game because that guy over there he's like a competitive player and like everybody else here is more casual. And so if I don't keep my plays under control, that guy's gonna run away with the game. And the only reason it didn't happen like that is actually because I just never drew any of my ramp or any of my good card draw. I just kept drawing options, which was not really that useful. I did end up getting some of my advocates, which I actually don't know if I've talked about the advocates yet. I have so many things I need to do. I'm sorry. I have so many videos I want to make because I want to introduce you guys to all of these weird cards that exist. But yeah, I think he did end up winning because he had built a really strong deck. He'd built a really good deck, but my group hug stuff just never ended up going off that game. So you do want to build into your niche fairly well. You're gonna hear me bring up a lot in these videos. If I'm talking about how I build decks, I'm gonna be bringing up my Marching Duodromes, my Eldmari's Vineyard, my Magus of the Vineyard, Belby. Gonna talk about Jolene, where she fits in. Red green doesn't go everywhere. I mean, green black doesn't go everywhere, but Belby is just so good. She's such a good commander. Ooh, I kind of want to make a Belby deck now. But you're gonna hear me talk about my myriad of draw options and so on. You do want to run like a fair number of ramping and drawing cards, and you want to make sure that your deck is fairly consistent. Don't be too bothered when your deck doesn't fly correctly. Every deck does it. Every deck is eventually going to fail to do the thing it set out to do, but you're not always going to be able to help other players. Nobody in my play group plays group hug, but I'm going to build a group hug to see how it works. Politically, nobody really trusts anyone who does nice things in-game for no reason. This is fantastic. I love this comment so much because this was genuinely my first several weeks sitting down. Every single table, I'd be like, yeah, I'm just a group hug player. And they're like, oh, okay. So you're a combo player or something along those lines. And one guy was even like, yeah, I'm also a group hug player. And he pulls out a Kanaios and Tiro deck. I think their name is. And I think he was genuinely just a combo deck. I think he was just assembling combos where, like, I'm out here giving card draws, I'm giving mana to everyone. He's giving that one card draw per turn from Kanaios and Tiro. I think it's just an extra land drop. I don't play Kanaios and Tiro just because I want to play more like splashy kind of commander stuff. Yeah, like nobody trusts the group hug player, and they shouldn't. They absolutely should not trust you. You should be spending every one of your turns, every one of your actions trying to push the game forward so that ultimately you win. And the amount of times I see people like, oh, you shouldn't trust the group hug player. I'm going to single out the group hug player every time, blah, blah, blah. I'm on board. I'm the group hug player. Punish me. See, some group hug players go into a game thinking they'll never be the target because group hug, without a way to end the game, will always push the best deck at the table to perform better and faster. Not true. Not always true. Not necessarily true. Although sometimes. The first part of the comment, though, I do find particularly important. This is, some group hug players go into the game thinking they'll never be the target. And that, stop doing that. Just stop. Just don't do it. You're playing group hug. You're the arch frenemy. All right? That's what we're going to call ourselves. We're Uwu Nikobolas. We are a target. We're a massive target as a group hug players because the longer we're in play, the more out of hand the entire board's going to get. My only complaint is usually how they act when you focus them, especially because the obvious solution to group hug play pattern is to focus them down before they can pull off some win con. That's only possible because they were left alone all game. I get politics and such, but being genuinely confused and upset when they get focused is baffling. Again, this is effectively the same as the previous comment, and I mean, yeah, just stop doing it, guys. Like, you're going to get targeted. What you need to be able to do is to respond both to the collective strategy of your opponent and yourself. I mean, I was advising earlier to remove your pillow fort stuff, but it's there for a reason, right? There is a reason players play pillow fort stuff, and it's because they're like, I don't want to get hit repeatedly every game. My entire pod will soul target me on turns 1 through 5, so that I'm out of the game before I'm giving everybody 27 lands and 57 card draws and all of that. There are going to be cards that make it so that you can win, right? With specifically a group hug strategy. Multani Maro Sorcerer, who is he's a pretty good group huggy kind of, not commander. He might be commander material. I would like to try for Multani at some point. But he's a pretty good bomb to drop. You've got your Mana Gorger, which specifically punishes opponents for playing spells. This is a really good win condition card. You get your 2 mana Hydra, and every time any spell is played, it gets a +1/+1 counter. What? It is a crazy, crazy card. Hamlet back Goliath. I was saying Jolene doesn't go in every deck, but if Hamlet back Goliath and green are in your deck, you Jolene said you can get your Hamlet back out. Hamlet back gets a +1/+1 counter for every power that hits the field on a creature. I mean, you now got this absolutely insane kind of threat on the board that's just like, oh, you're going to play a 5/5? Okay, it's now an 11/11. Hello, baby Thraxamundar or something. As the group hug player, you should be playing group hug level threats, right? You should be playing threats that play to our strength. and play to your unique identity as a group hug player. But don't, like, just, you need to understand that players are going to focus you because you provide such a sideways threat, such a big threat to the entire board. Yeah. Just get used to being targeted. You're playing group hug. You are the arch frenemy. I'd say my biggest complaint about the deck is that the decks rarely have an actual plan to win. It's kind of just, I hope the one remaining opponent has been roughed up enough to that connecting with my Elvish Mystic finishes them off. The solution doesn't occur much because, the situation doesn't occur much because group hug players die as soon as everyone has what they need, but if it does happen, it's pretty much battle cruiser and it sucks. Approach helped a bit. Before that, it was an absolute pox. But I absolutely can't stand decks where the only real plan is dirtling. This is what I was talking about before. Remove your pillow fort pieces. Create an actual plan for how to win. Look, you want some suggestions? Descent into Avernus pushes the game forward every single turn. It's going to deal 2 damage on its second turn out, 4 damage on its third turn out. It only costs 3 mana. It does the group hug thing by giving everybody treasures. So you get to be like, I'm just a friendly group hug guy, but also, I'm also the fucking happy old group hugging burn you to death guy. Descent into Avernus, I think, is a really, really fun group hug piece. And I think it's a vital piece of group hug, tech. Like, yeah, there's no card that moves the game forward quite like Descent into Avernus does in a group hug way. You have to have your answer. You have to have your end game thoughts and solutions. If you're running a Kenrith deck, running a Heartstone and Composite Golem gives you an end game combo, where you can force everybody to draw out if you want to play the ridiculous style. There are all sorts of there's Windfall as a potential answer. If you give everybody 27 cards in hand and then you Windfall, they all draw 27 more cards. By that point, they're probably halfway through their deck already because of how much card draw you've already been giving them. There is it Sky Scribbles? Sky Scribing? Whatever. Tap 2 blue and X to draw, everybody draws X cards. And then there's Folio of Fancies, which is 2 times X, tap, draw X card. Every player draws X cards. Tap 2 blue and 1, or 1 blue and 2. All players mill for hand size. No players have a maximum hand size. It's such a intense mill engine. It is the thing that's helped Kenrith win the most. Or gets enemies within threat range the most, is my Folio of Fancies just absolutely going insane. I mean, I like playing against it, but I try to avoid playing cards that give my opponents an advantage. This is something actually I hear a lot from competitive level players or standard players, right? Because when you're playing Magic the Gathering normally, the idea of, I'm going to just give my opponents cards, I'm going to give them mana, I'm going to give them card draw, I'm going to give them creatures, whatever, that sounds insane. But lots of decks run Zancha, lots of decks run Lorana the Third Path, lots of decks will run these cards that give everybody a little something. Try to take a little something, you know. I think that players, when they think about group hug stuff, aren't thinking strategically enough. This would be both group hug and non-group hug players. You're not. You tend to think, you know, oh, I'm going to play this silly, like, fun level deck. But there's a competitive CEDH level group hug deck. It is using Selvala, You Google Selvala Twiddlestorm. This deck can win in tournaments. It's not going to win a whole lot, but it's a group hug deck in the competitive level. You can win as a group hug player. You just have to actually think on a strategic level. How am I going to take advantage of what my opponents have? How am I going to take advantage of what I have? How do I make sure that every one of my plays give my opponent 90% where I'm getting 100%? How am I going to constantly capitalize on a gap that I am expanding with every move? Yeah, there's been a lot of these kind of comments. I think that as group hug players, people probably do need to get better about thinking these more board advancing kind of strategies. And we have one final comment here, and that is, it's called group hug, but no one actually hugs you. And that is the truest problem with group hug decks. Nobody actually hugs the group hug player. I'm fine. It's fine. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of different thing. I do like getting people's feedback on sort of the stuff I say and what people actually think about group hug decks, because group hug, to me, as an archetype, is one that I think gets a lot of heat it doesn't deserve. I think that there are a number of kind of uncreative players in the group hug space. People would just be like, oh, just run Kenrith. That's your group hug commander. But there are so many commanders out there who can be run as group hug. I do plan on building some of those decks in the coming years. Magic's an expensive hobby. I'm not going to say in the coming months. The Kenrith and the Gearlock deck were fairly expensive. I shouldn't be spending that much money on these decks, but there are a lot of creative sort of angles you can take on playing group hug decks. Combo is a thing. Aggro is still a thing. Counters matter. Creature type matters. All of these strategies exist within group hug as well as outside of it. There are colors that have a harder time with it. Black isn't particularly good at doing the group hug thing. Red is getting better, actually. I do want to make a video on some of the newer cards that have come out that I think are good in red in particular for group hug. But that is gonna be it for now. If you are interested in the perspective of somebody who is interested in EDH, interested in political play, and interested in group hug, well, hopefully 45 minutes isn't too much rambling for you. Jeez, if you're a group hug player, this is still shorter than any of your games, so don't complain. Hopefully I haven't rambled too much. Thank you very much, and good night.